Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another tier list, but with a twist. We're not only just going to do a tier list, I'm going to do little short descriptions on why I put them where I put them. Once again, before this video starts, before you start raging, I'm not a pro league player. These are going to be ranked in ranked. So how good they are in ranked is how I'm going to rank them, not like a pro player. So if you watch someone like Pengu or Bolo or something and they do a tier list, theirs might look different than mine because I play ranked mostly and they play competitive matches. Second, we're going to give one quick tip for every single operator. This took a long time to make, so I'd appreciate just a like. That is all I ask for you, and subscribe if you aren't already. But yeah, this took forever, so let's get into this, starting with the first operator. So starting off with Vigil, this is going to be put in great because he is a great roamer all the time, and his ability is really just very overpowered. For roaming, that is. Not the best anchor, but definitely great for roaming. My quick tip for you is line scans actually do not affect Vigil as long as you have the ERC7 device activated on Vigil. You can also turn on the ERC7 anytime you hear a Yana. If Yana's coming through with one of her holographs, you can actually not be seen by it just by turning on your gadget. In my opinion, Melusi is very solid in the right hands, but most of the time in ranked, they are completely wasted. Now, to make them not wasted and make them actually good, you got to put them on elevated surfaces that aren't available for them to knife or impact it off of. If you put it in a good location, that creates a great Melusi, but for most players, it's just in the solid category if you were to generalize it across the whole Siege population. Ying is a very underrated operator, and there's a lot of cool tips with her, but the one that I don't see a lot of people using is actually the charge ability. So if you just instantly throw your Ying, it's going to take 5 seconds to detonate. One light would be 3, 2 lights will be 1, and then if it's fully lit up, if you held it for a while, it will immediately go off once you throw it. That's just a fun quick tip for Ying. Alibi is situationally very, very good. I would make the argument that she's solid, but I would say there are a lot of things on defense that you need before you need an Alibi. However, there are some cool things you could do with Alibi, such as throwing an Alibi outside. If you throw it outside, it could actually keep your identity hidden if you choose to run out, because the Alibi prism will be instead the one that is detected outside instead of you. Doc is one that I hate to do this to him, but I'm going to put him in useless because there's really no reason to use him anymore. If you're going to use one of these guys, you got to use Rook, if anything. But if you do want a fun tip, I guess, it's not really a tip because I don't think there's really a true tip with the stim gun. It's very simple, very self-explanatory. But whenever you get revived by a Doc stim, you will revive yourself with 75 HP instead of a standard 20. So when you're deciding to revive someone by hand or with the stim gun, you always want to do the stim gun just to give them more health because a stim is only worth 40 HP usually. Dokkaebi is another underrated operator that I'm going to put under solid. There's a lot of cool things about Dokkaebi. One thing that you might not know by now is that Echo actually is able to be called now by Dokkaebi. He used to not be able to, but now he is. And also, just a tip for countering Dokkaebi, you could be in a mute radius, and if you are in mute radius, it's kind of a mute tip, but if you're in a mute radius, you will not be getting phone calls from Dokkaebi, which is an awesome tip. Now, I gotta say, Thatcher is just always a great operator, but a quick tip for Thatcher, because you are kind of still one of the most important operators here. Whenever the site is only 1 floor above and you have access to a rooftop, you can throw a Thatcher on top of the rooftop without actually having to go into anywhere, cover more of a radius, and it will go through the entire floor and EMP the entire floor there. Capiteo sits in the situationally good operator. Doesn't mean they're bad, by the way. It just means that they're situationally good because you can't always have Capiteo spots. But however, if you do, you're doing pretty good. Now, as for some quick tips here, the bolts that you shoot, all 4 of them, cannot be intercepted by ADSs, so do not worry and try to burn ADSs in any way because it will not intercept it in the first place. Also, if you're newer, the fire bullets actually do damage to everyone, so don't accidentally shoot this thing at your teammate. Mirror falls in the situationally good. This is a operator where you should be using the shotgun as a backup and the Vector as the primary. My tip with Mirror is always the same. Use that shotgun and make C4 holes on the top. As always, you should have one reinforced wall with your mirror on it, and then the one to the right or to the left should be unreinforced with a shotgun hole around the top, and that should be where you are able to C4 and pre-fire through. That's pretty basic, but I know some people need a refresher on that. I'm going to put Buck as still a good operator. Now, we've seen a lot of nerfs, and I think Sledge is overall a better operator, but the advantage with Buck is to be able to shoot upwards or downwards. A tip for you guys is to stand further back. You can actually cover a pretty large spread by letting the skeleton key actually spread out. It's not that tight. It's actually a shotgun, so consider doing that. But I would only do this if you are planning on going vertically up, because that's something Sledge can't do. Every other situation though, Sledge is pretty much the better operator. Now I'd say Glaz is pretty useless in most rank scenarios. However, there are some situations, and I like how his operator gadgets have changed a little bit. He now has access to the Gon 6 and also frag grenade, so you have a lot of destructibility if you want it, but you also want smoke grenades, so it's kind of hard to determine which one you want, because you also want a pistol, so you kind of have the option of destructibility, but it's not optimal. Now, if you do choose to go with the frag grenades instead of smoke grenades for whatever reason, I'd pair this with Capitao. If you have him paired, the smoke bullets on Capitao actually are much larger than normal smoke grenades, so they're paired together very, very well. Now, Clash's operator, I give a lot of crap to because I just don't really like Clash. He's actually she's actually very, very overpowered if you are with a team. Now, that is a big if, and since this is ranked, very rarely are you going to have a 5-stack or something where Clash is actually useful, because Clash is really useful at being a bait or just being a shield for your teammate to play off of. That is basically the biggest tip with that. I'm going to put it under situational just because of that. If you just have one person, you could play off of it and use yourself as bait and a shield for a specific other operator. But with the shield break and everything, this operator is very, very situational. It's definitely not viable if you're just a complete solo, but if you do have one other teammate, it can be at least decent, I guess. Montaigne's going to go in the same situation, just on the attacker side of things. If you are Montaigne, always bring smokes, in my opinion, and also take the diffuser. If you don't have the diffuser, you're kind of not optimally playing Montaigne, because in a lot of situations you should just smoke out and plant the bomb as fast as you can and turn your shield against wherever the enemies are, because the shield will actually block bullets from you whenever you go down to defuse. It'll go on your back and block all the bullets. So pair that with the smoke grenades and it should be an easy plant for rush plants and things like that. Maestro is so freaking good, so I would put him all the way at OP. Now, there are a few things that are usually missed with Maestro. First of all, put it in a place where it actually has a lot of visibility of the room. There's no reason to put it in a corner where you can only see a box. Put it in a place where you could actually see a good portion of the room. Now, additionally, anytime it is being shot at while it's open, you should always turn it, because that will block bullets from destroying it. But once you are done, remember to turn this back to wherever you want to be able to see it once the bulletproof glass is actually back in front of the camera. If you don't do this, no one else on your team can actually turn the camera, so it's pretty much useless if you turn it against the wall and don't return it back. Maverick is a great operator. I think it's always going to be great, because if you don't have a Thatcher, you kind of need a Maverick, so that's kind of how I look at it. You could also just take them both and always get every single wall. Really, regardless, there's so many ways to actually get into sight now with the new operator, of course, plus Maverick, plus Thatcher. There's no excuse to not be able to get through a hard breach. But the one thing I don't ever see Maverick players doing is actually using the gadget to its full potential. It's able to destroy a lot of things, more than you might even think. You could destroy Maestro cams, you could destroy bulletproofs, always you can with your knife anyways, but it's able to destroy all that stuff that you usually can't, such as shields, Maestro cams, etc. Nomad, in my opinion, is super, super solid, and it's definitely the best flank watch per se, as long as you know how to use it strategically. Now, I have a whole guide on that, so we're not going to go too much in detail there, but a quick tip with Nomad is I see a lot of people like aim up their Nomad a little bit, but this thing actually travels in a straight line with no bullet drop off no matter what. So go ahead, if you're across map, just shoot that thing exactly where you want it. Account like it's a sniper and the bullets are going to drop off, because they won't. It's a straight line. Valkyrie is a super, super good operator. I'm going to put her up in great. There's a lot of reasons for this, but the main thing with Valkyrie is you really have to know where to put these cameras. Now, I have a whole series literally on Valkyrie spots on every single map of ranked. You could check that out, or you could just go into custom games. Just go into custom games, throw these cams, see where they land, and learn how to play off of them. Learn how to run out based off of your Valkyrie cams, or at least play off of them in some way. If you just throw your cams and don't use them, you are not playing Valkyrie right. There's no obvious tip, but that is definitely my main tip there, is just to at least do that. Frost, in my opinion, is bad. It's not because the gadget's really that terrible. It's pretty situational, but the weapons are just not it. That's all I could say. They're just not it. And as for a tip, you could pair these things with barbed wire. They're pretty good, but you could also pair it with a deployable shield. Pair it with a deployable shield or under a window. That's really where it's optimized. Also, put your frost traps. You can, if it's like a double window, put them very close together, because if one jumps jumps in and lands in a frost mat, most likely the teammate's going to think that that's the only frost mat there. They're soon going to jump in and you might actually end up killing 2 of them for the price of 1. So that could be very beneficial, but frost is pretty bad. I would say Twitch is probably a rare / situational pick with a very, very good weapon. That's the main lore, at least, of it. If you're going to put Twitch over any other operator, it's probably because of the weapon, but there are a few things you should be doing, especially when you are Twitch. First things first is always prioritize Miras if you can, because this is actually the best counter to Mira by far. Another thing, which is something that's very unknown, is actually you could shoot Twitch shock darts at a Maestro Cam and it will destroy it with 2 shots. Just make sure you're aiming for the actual eye of the Maestro Cam. Gridlock is a underrated operator. Some people hate her, but I think she's very, very good once you learn how to use her. You got smokes, you got those gridlocks. So use the gridlock gadget in multiple ways. I learned that gridlock is really not that good at flank watching. You can still use it for that, but better yet, use her as really like the plant help, okay? First, you can smoke. Second, once that bomb is planted, throw your gridlocks all over that thing. It's going to be impossible for the enemies to get to the diffuser. Pair that with any other operators with nades, stuns, anything like that. You'll be able to use the sound cues just from the gridlocks to win the round every time whenever you plant it. It could be very powerful, especially in ranked. The only real big counter to it is if someone has like an impact grenade or something. Otherwise, they're gonna have to shoot every single one of them. So if you were to throw all of your gridlocks on the diffuser, that round is cake. I don't even know where to put Flores. It's either great or OP. I just think it's so freaking good. What you can do with it, what you can destroy with it, which is everything. I'm just gonna put him in great. You could give or take great or OP. Let me know what you guys think of Flores, but I think great, OP, anywhere between that is probably where he belongs. And remember, don't use the drone to try to kill people. Actually use it to try to destroy as much as you can. If you get a kill, then cool, but I'd more so focus on pushing enemies out of their camping spots, try to destroy all their utility wherever they're camping, or just break walls open and create lines of sight. So many different ways to play Flores, so I love that about Flores. Pulse is a solid operator with a low tier weapon, but Pulse is very good at pre-play C4s. That's something I don't see enough of when people are playing Pulse. They don't do pre-play C4s enough. Do them in places that aren't obvious either. Do them out of the site. Put them more into places that are high congestion areas or high areas of interest, like Consulate. Go under spiral stairs and blow them up as they walk through. Some stuff like that. That's not directly connected to whatever site you're playing, but they're common areas that people go to. You don't always just have to be sitting in sight with your C4 on your hand. Switch it up, play in ways that you usually would not. With how many operators we have on attack now, I think Lion is good, but he's actually bad. Whatever you see how many options you have, I would put Lion and Finka both here. They're gonna both just sit here because I think they're so situational that it makes them bad, and there's so many better choices to do on attack than Lion or Finka. But if you want a Lion tip, I would pair this thing with Jackal. If you could do that, you could Jackal track and Lion, and basically the roamers are all screwed. It's easy to track them down. They can't move without being seen at all times. It creates for a very annoying, very annoying circumstances. As for Finka, I'm gonna give another Mute shout out. I'm just gonna put Mute in the OP category right now because I've mentioned tips for him on every other operator, like multiple operators at this point. Finka's another one. If your teammate is within a Mute Jammer's radius, they will not receive the boost, as even if they step out, they're still not going to receive that boost. So Mute, once again, another counter to another thing. I ain't really got nothing for Finka though. Pretty basic operator, pretty easy to use operator, and pretty bad operator. Tachanka, they don't have the updated thing on this tier list, but I would say he's situational at best. Smoke is still a lot better at what they do. They have a similar role, but Tachanka just doesn't do it as well. The thing I would say with Tachanka though is space out when you're shooting your fire. I see a lot of people just shoot them all at once. They cover a pretty large range, so there's no reason to shoot them all at once. Space them out. Try to take as much time as you can. Similarly, play them like you would a smoke, even though you have more of them. So I'm going to pair Zofia and Ela together. They're going to be in different categories. Zofia is going to be great, but Ela is going to be in, I'm going to put Ela in actually solid, but the thing with their tips is both of them kind of intertwine with each other. They're both able, because they have a similar gadget at nature, is the concussion. They are able to recover 50% faster than any other operator with each other's gadgets, so keep that in mind anytime you're playing. As for when that Zofia is specific, quit ADSing whenever you're in your Zofia. Just aim at the center dot in your screen. That's where the Zofia will precisely go. Don't worry about anything else. You don't need to ADS with Zofia. It's probably the worst thing you can do. Kaid is a solid operator, and you can actually do a lot with Kaid that a lot of people don't even know. They buffed the range a few seasons ago. I think it was actually more like a year ago, but you can get up to 4 in some spots, but mostly 3 concurrent solid reinforced walls plus any utility around. So just practice this. Try to get to the point where you're able to get as much as you can, because these could be really beneficial. The only thing is Kaid tricking is not really that good, so this is more optimal if you're playing someone without a Thatcher. Additionally, this is the best one for countering hatches. Thermite is great at what he does, still has the largest breach in the game, a little different than Ace and Hibana. We'll put them all back to back here. But Thermite's pretty self-explanatory. You should always be traveling with the pack, maybe even be carrying the diffuser. But nonetheless, if you ever find yourself alone at a reinforced wall and there's a soft wall or a soft floor under, you can place your Thermite on the soft floor near the wall and it'll actually get a portion of the wall. That's something that a lot of people know, but at the same time, newer players don't know that at all. I never have seen that ever, and anytime I'm playing casuals with any low-ranked players, don't know if it's just because they don't know it or if they just don't want to use it in a casual, but something that I thought was worth mentioning. Hibana is now equipped with 18 pellets and you're able to actually arrange them however you see. I'm putting them in gray because at hatches, from a hatch perspective, each hatch takes 4. So set it in that 4 range or whatever. Any reinforced hatch takes 4. So you're able to theoretically get 4 hatches, which is insane. And then you also have 2 remaining for something else. But yeah, use this anytime you need hatches. 4 hatches potential. So I don't even know what map has 4 hatches above it. But if you for whatever reason find you need hatches, then Hibana is a must pick. Ace in this phase, I gotta give him OP just because the AK-12, you have one of the best gadgets in the game, one of the best weapons in the game. Use that AK-12, and regardless of whatever else thoughts you're having, AK-12 with this gadget is stupid. The main thing here with Ace though is don't use this thing on hatches ever. That is the biggest tip I could give you. Don't use it on hatches. Try to focus on walls, mirrors as well. That's a great thing to counter with Ace's charges. But yes, do not use this thing on hatches. It will take 66% of all of your utility just on one hatch. There's much better operators to do this. Any of the other hard breaches are better at hatches in my opinion, but for what you're getting with Ace, it's got to be in the OP category until maybe they nerf the AK-12 or just take it off Ace. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but Ace is really dumb good. With Rook, I don't know. Situational or solid? I'm just going to say situational because he doesn't offer too much to the team besides just providing like a 1 bullet health. If you're in Pro League, right, you would say that this thing is awful because Pro League is a lot of headshots, a lot of high aiming, so it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But I gotta say in ranked it's pretty good because this is probably the go-to if you're trying to do any sort of spawn peaks, because you have the 2x, Doc does not. Plus, you're giving your teammates something very passively, but ultimately you're pretty much a anchor. But always play Rook in places that you can't usually play with defenders, because usually you got to play a little bit more close range so you have a chance versus all the ACOGs on attack. But with Rook, you're able to actually counter them fairly. Also do spawn peeks whenever you're doing Rook. Probably the best operator to spawn peek with. Plus, you have a little bit of additional health if they don't headshot you. Ashe is basically the alternative to Zofia. Great operator. My tip for Ashe is just to run in without droning at. No, I'm kidding. Instead, do quite the opposite. I see a lot of Ashe players, they want to just rush in, right? So they breach charge a soft barricade, not a castle barricade. They just breach charge a barricade and run right through sight. That is something that you should absolutely not do with Ashe. You have so much utility now. You might as well destroy as much utility as you can. You don't always just have to W key straight into sight. It's definitely not worth it. At this phase, Bandit has a lot of counters. Still Bandit tricking, still good. I'm going to put him right up there with Kaid because Mute is better in every single way. But I do have to say on breach denial, I gotta say I still think Bandit and Kaid are better in a lot of situations, but Mute can be multiple things, so Mute's just better than him by far. My tip with Bandit will always remain the same. Try the MP7 with iron sights. It creates basically a no recoil weapon. I know Bandit already doesn't really have much recoil, but this is actually kind of insane. So just try it out. Let me know what you think of it. Not really have any other Bandit tips besides learn how to Bandit trick. Other than that though, it's pretty easy operator. Sledge, in my opinion, is great. It's got to be higher than Buck, so I'm going to put it in great because you could use a Sledge pretty much for anything in any role. The one tip, though, with Sledge is use the dang hammer. Not a lot of people use enough of it. You have 25 hits with this hammer, so just start whacking the floor, do whatever you got to do. And remember with Sledge, don't just sledge every single thing concurrently. Make the sledges in different spots. Spread them out so you're not going to be shot through the whole because once again, these vertical holes work both ways. Don't screw yourself with your own sledge holes. Echo, in my opinion, has got to be situational. I just don't know. I don't know. I just don't think he's anywhere near where he used to be. I would say a few months ago, I mean, he was S++. But after all they've done to him, now that his drones are visible, I gotta say it's not the best anymore. The cloaking ability is really not there. But I will say one thing, Echo is really good at actually helping your roamers out. Instead of just playing them all in sight, you could play one of your Echo drones, you know, sit somewhere safe and actually help out your roamers. Be like an actual drone. You're a moving camera for all. And just remember that whenever you are playing Echo, you don't just have to have all of your Echoes in sight. You can actually move them across the map, help your roamers out. It's very good if you pair them with teammates. And it's still very good. It's just more situational and you got to be a little bit more active with the Echo drone instead of just putting it on the roof and letting it cloak in. Castle is a situational operator for me as well. Castle is good if you have correct setups. And I also think that it's nice that they gave Castle an actual scope compared to Pulse. That's one thing that I really like that Castle has that Pulse doesn't, I guess. But overall, there's so many ways to destroy castles at this moment. Ash, Sophia, Sledge, there's just so many different ways to destroy the castle barricades. So I think it needs to be reworked in some way. I'd prefer for it to be reworked in any way, really. But a cool way to play Sledge is actually on runouts. If you hit your barricade or your Sledge barricade 11 times, on the 12th time, it'll actually break. So it takes 12 hits. So you could break it 11 times and then jump through the window, or break it and then jump through the window and get some cheeky kills if you wish. This is really good paired with a Vault cam or just a default cam. It just takes a little bit more strategy to do that. Smoke is goated. I have to put it at great. I'm not going to put him in OP because he's always really just great operator, generally speaking. Gotta say, I thought he was going to be affected a lot more by Tachanka, but the Tachanka rework wasn't all that it was hyped up to be. Plus, you still get the SMG-11 with the shotgun. With Smoke, the main tip is actually use the smokes. I see a lot of times people want to say, hey, you can only use your smokes in the past, and then the last 45 seconds of the round. Yes, that is a good general tip. However, if you die with 3 smokes on you, what good did that do? That did absolutely nothing. So you might as well use them if you're in kind of a pickle. You might as well use them on something rather than just dying with them, because they don't do any good whenever they just disappear. Mozzie's a solid operator, solid weapons. P10 is one of my favorite weapons. Commando's really good. But the one thing I always see Mozzie players doing is something that you should not do, is place all of your Mozzies at the beginning of the round in the prep phase. Most of the time, it doesn't really do much besides just make the drones hide and get away from your Mozzie. It's not doing much. The main goal of Mozzie is to actually get the drones. So try to actually capture the drones in the prep phase and use them to your team's advantage. It can be used similarly to like an Echo, and you can roam with the drones, and it could be a pretty nice, mean 1-2 combo. Fuse is situationally good. You got to know how to play him, obviously, but I'm just going to say situational because you do have a good gun. You have a decent gadget that I would like to get reworked in some way. I would really like it, and I think it would give a huge buff to the attackers, and especially Fuse, if they made it so it can go through reinforced walls that don't have a bandit kite or a mute or anything on it. But that would be a pretty big buff for Fuse, in my opinion. But the one way to play Fuse right now, and that's why it's really good situationally, is if there is vertical play from above, play with your Sledge and Fuse the entire floor. You're going to be able to destroy so much utility. Don't worry about getting kills with Fuse. It's not really the main point of it. It's just destroy everything in the room that you possibly can. But it requires a lot of situational awareness, plus being able to have that vertical presence. If there's no vertical walls above the site, then, well, it's not very useful, is it? Blitz, in my opinion, is dog water, absolute trash. I'm going to put Ward in there. I'm just going to put all the trash operators here while we're working on them. These are useless operators. All of these, the guys are pretty useless, in my opinion, all these ones. Warden, there's really no tip. I can't preface it enough, but actually use the gadget, I guess, is the only tip. And if the team is always bringing a blitz and it's annoying you, well, that's the only thing Warden counters. So that's why I say it's useless, because there is actually zero reason to pick Warden ever, besides maybe he looks cool. As for Oryx, once again, just use the T5 SMG and see what you could do, but T5 Oryx, it's just too loud at the moment. It was okay. I had him up a few more in the last one because runouts were good, but now that the runout timer is so short, I just don't see a reason to play Oryx. That would have been my tip, is to run out with Oryx, which could still work, but nowadays I don't think any of these operators are very good at all. I don't really think you should play them. So we're just going to skip past these ones. Jaeger's still going to go into great, even though we have had nerfs. We're going to put Wamai and Jaeger here because you need them. Even though there's a little bit of a nerf with Jaeger, you still need them. A thing that I like to do now with Jaegers is actually, if it's a really hot spot where nades are thrown a lot, pair the two Jaeger ADSs together, or at least near each other where they could cover the same proximity, because now that there's that cooldown timer, you could still burn the same amount of utility. They're going to transfer off on when they cool down. So pairing them together, I've found, has worked pretty well for me. And as for Wamai, always place these things as far away as gadgets as possible. I see people place these like where they're playing. If you put the Wamai on the shield that you're playing, if someone throws a grenade, the Wamai is going to capture it, and it's a magnet, so it'll attract it to it, and then it'll destroy your shield and potentially kill you. So just remember to put it away from any gadget, anything that you don't want destroyed, put it as far away as possible from that. Cav is a rare situational pick. I think in low ranks, it's a very good pick because teams don't have any cooperation at all. But in high ranks, I would avoid Cav for the most part. I mean, it does not work on any coordinated team. If you're in Plat 2, Plat 1, it's pretty hard to get Cav to work. You gotta hopefully run into a team that's very uncoordinated, that does not have comms. So situational is where Cav ends up. A tip for Cav is whenever you are being jackal tracked, actually use the Cav. The gadget actually does counter jackal, which is a fun tip that some people don't know. Legion's pretty good. I have to say, not OP. I had him in OP, I believe I don't know if I had him in OP last season. I don't really recall, but he's been up here for the whole time. Now that we lost the 1.5 times, it's not as OP, the weapon at least, the T5. However, the gadget is still very good. I do recommend though you use the gadget and actually use it for sound cues rather than to actually injure opponents. It's not very good for injuring opponents, but it is stupid good for using it for sound cues to determine where people are. If you just remember where you put every single legion, while you might not be able to see the indicator anymore, you still have ears, which is a great benefit for most of us. I think most of us have ears, so please use this in that way instead of trying to have visual contact on every single legion. Just remember where you throw every single goo mine, or else throwing legions is pretty useless in most situations. IQ is a pretty darn good operator. Gotta put her in great because there is a lot of uses for this. Big counters include like Valkyrie, for example. That is a great counter. Another one is anytime you're dealing with a team that's running out a lot, they're usually going to be using cameras. So with IQ, you're able to see their cell phones. If they are on their cell phones, you're able to see that and pre-fire them through a barricade. I've done this so many times. Do this anytime you're dealing with an annoying team that's running out or doing any sort of bigotry that you don't want to deal with. For ranked, I'm going to put Jackal in OP. There's just like, as a solo queue operator, like absolute madman. You can just go kill every single roamer on the map, annoy everyone on the map. Once again, really the only counter, the true counter, is Cavi, and your weapons are insane. I'm going to use the same tip I gave for Line here. Pair these two together and run through, and you will clear roamers in literally 30 seconds per floor, which is insane. At the current moment, I gotta say, Nock is pretty useless, unfortunately. Very fun, but useless because of all of the gadgets that now counter her. The tip I got to give you though is just you can avoid everything, then that could be okay. But the problem is it's hard to avoid everything, and if you sprint, you're now going to be able to be seen because it'll stutter. If you go through barbed wire, if you take any sorts of damage, if you shoot, if you do anything, pretty much you're going to be able to be seen on cameras and heard pretty loudly. Plus, she's not completely silent. I think it would be cool if she was completely silent, but dude, I'm not the developer here. Moving on to Kapkan. A lot of people give Kapkan crap, but his gun is not the hardest hitter, but it has pretty much no recoil. You have a pretty good sight with it now. I think Kapkan's a solid operator. You might disagree, agree to disagree, whatever you want to say. You guys can always, of course, this is always just an opinion anyways. But I will say a tip with Kapkan is don't put everything in sight. Actually put them in other places too. You could put them in common entries, put them in places that they won't always expect them to be. You don't have to put every single one of your traps inside of the site. That's usually pretty obvious. You want to use a few of them there, obviously, but put them in other places as well. It's kind of the flip of the coin with Amaru, either situationally good, situationally bad in general. It depends on how you use it really, but I'm going to put it in bad generally. There are very limited situations where it'll work, especially if the other team that you're playing is ignorant and doesn't know anything, or if they're all roaming. This could be pretty good. A common issue and something that you shouldn't do with Amaru is just try to swing through the window in the first 2 seconds of the round. That is very easy to tell. One thing I would do instead is go from under. You can go through hatches from underneath. For example, go under the site, wherever hatch is, pre-place your drone there, and if you don't see anyone there, just shoot up through there, and that's the best place to rush from instead of just yeeting through a window. That's definitely my recommendation there. Kali is a underrated good operator, solid operator in general, pretty much the sniper of Siege now. Glaz is it's not even a sniper. So Kali really takes the cake there. Also use that SMG9 as the backup. But as for some tips, this thing has a lot of destructibility potential. Any soft walls, it will go through multiple of them and create a pretty sizable hole. So you could create some pretty cool lines of sight. A good example is bank on top. Just sit on that parking garage and shoot through the entire building pretty much. Another thing is you could shoot hatches one time with Kali and it will destroy it as long as they're soft. Also, whenever you are shooting, try to aim for anything that's not the limbs. If you shoot them in the limbs, that will only do 50 HP. You don't want to do that. You want to down them instantly. So try to aim for somewhere in the torso to head area. Yo-Yo for ranked is situational. For like Pro League, this would be a lot higher, but for ranked, situational. Hyped to see what the rework really does to it. That's really all I got to say about Goyo. A tip I can use is pair Kapkan with Goyo and you have a pretty good combo, an instant combo that is pretty dangerous, assuming they don't break it. Otherwise, 2 gadgets are just wasted. But yeah, it's situational, definitely for ranked. I want to put Yana at a solid level. Solid or situational for me for sure, somewhere within this range. But the thing I really like is the holograms. They are very good. It's basically unlimited drones for Yana. You got to use it for intel. That is really, really beneficial. Also could use it for baiting. A quick tip I could give for you with Yana though is there are only 2 times for the cooldown. That's either 8 seconds or 30 seconds. So keep that in mind. Try not to let it completely expire or else it's going to take the entire 30 seconds. As long as you do it just a quick Yana scan, it'll recharge in 8 seconds, which really isn't that much. Blackbeard's just pretty broken. You could still see the top of his head just like how his emblem shows. So it's possible to kill him, but pretty broken. I can make the case for OP, but I'm just gonna say solid because he actually is very, very solid in one situation most of the time, and that is playing Windows or anything where you can head glitch. That's where you get really overpowered. Other than that though, you move slow. You have a pretty okay weapon, but so I gotta say, just remember to use Blackbeard on Windows. That's about as cheeky as it gets, and that's my tip for him if you really want to play him that bad. These two are some that are gonna disagree with me. Aruni I think is a great operator. And same thing with Zero. Not a lot of people are using Zero. I just don't get it. They don't get the potential of it. With Zero, use it like it is a Valkyrie. Like use it like it's a cam. It gives you so much different angles that you can watch instead of trying to zap people for freaking 5 HP. Worry about getting intel. That's the main thing. So I guess this is more of a high rank thing, but super underrated. As for Aruni, I don't know how you could say it's not a great operator. There's a lot of potential with Aruni, but things you got to look out for is the track stinger from Gridlock. That's really powerful at countering Aruni because you don't actually literally have to throw the entire thing. If just one track goes through the Aruni, it will disable it entirely. So it could be pretty darn powerful for that. And also just remember to reactivate this thing always. This should be a very high priority. If it gets deactivated, try to activate it in any way. Use a Maestro cam to zap it. Anything that touches it will reactivate it. So just make sure to touch it in any way and that'll be good. But yeah, yo, this took a minute to make, thinking of a tip for every operator, at least most every operator, minus I think Blitz is what we didn't do. But yeah, that took a minute. Thank you very much for watching all the way through though. If you made it to here, let me know what you guys would change, and also give some tips to other people on stuff I didn't mention, like crazy tips that no one would know unless if they really play the game a lot, because a lot of people that watch tier lists are looking just for good operators and cool things about operators. So feel free to leave those down below. But other than that, thank you very much for joining me today. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.